When we play songs on Lauren's show, and people will message in being like, oh, this song was played at my dad's funeral, it's brought back so many memories, happy memories or sad memories, and this song is our first wedding dance. And that, again, the power of music, because music is actually one of the greatest things to ever exist in humanity. There's nothing as good as music, really.
Hello, and welcome to Freelance Pod. My name's Chandrika Chakrabarti, and I'll be your host. Freelance Pod is all about how the internet has revolutionised the world of work. So each episode I'll interview a guest about how digital has changed their industry or created their job. If you'd like to get involved in the conversation, I'd love to hear from you. So you can find Freelance Pod on Twitter and Instagram, you can join the Facebook group, and you can also sign up to the newsletter. This episode's guest is BBC Six music and podcast producer Shola Aleje. Shola works on Laverne's Six Music Show, and she's produced podcasts for Bestival, Healey and Emma Gannon.
My name is Shola Aleje. I'm an assistant producer for the Laverne show at BBC Six Music, and I'm also a podcast producer, and I've produced podcasts such as Get Off Your Breasts, which is a kind of a round table podcast with Emma Gannon and Liana Bird, and also I produced podcasts for one called Dear 1995 and another one called The Hotbed Collective, and various live podcasts. I do quite a lot of those, like at Waterstones, like Soho Hotel, just tons basically.
How did you get into the live podcasting? Because I feel like that's got huge in the last few years.
It's kind of an accident, really. There's an amazing woman called Emma Gannon. She does loads of events, but she kind of would always basically pimp me out. So anytime someone wanted to, do a live event with her and they wanted it recorded, she'd kind of always mention me, which is great and just lovely. So I kind of started doing that, and then, some other people got in contact about doing them, and it just kind of went from there, really.
Well, how did you meet Emma Gannon then? How did you start working with her? Of Control, Alt, Delete?
Yeah, so she, the actual first podcast I did, which was with a lady called Freddie Harrell, who's an incredible ASOS influencer on Instagram, and then she has kind of developed into a coach and just does loads of amazing things. But when I first started out podcasting, I kind of contacted her saying, would you be interested in doing a podcast? And she said she was going to do it, and it was great. And then she ended up being my first guest, Emma Gannon. And then we kind of just kept in contact from there. And yeah, we do loads of events together, and it's just so easy working with her. Her and Liana on Get Off Your Breast, I just feel always so much lighter when I lead them, because it's, essentially three women talking about really important things, but also having fun.
So have you been to some really exciting celebrities' houses with that podcast?
Yeah, so for season 2, we went to Sadie Frost's house, which was incredible.
Is it in North London?
Yeah, North London, yeah. And the good thing about this podcast is that you get to, it's an intimate setting, and I feel that, my thing is that when you record at people's houses, they are at their most comfortable, and when they're most comfortable, they more often than not will open up and kind of say something, rather than sometimes in a studio it can be a bit intimidating, but I have things like, even recording with using lav mics rather than big microphones and stuff like that, it just makes them feel a bit more comfortable. So yeah, Sarah Pascoe as well, went to her flat. I think she'd just moved in. That was great. That was actually probably one of my favourite episodes. She's an incredible woman and very wise.
And then actually we're recording in your living room right now. You very kindly offered it up because, I'm just kind of like a nomadic podcaster at the moment, just popping up anywhere.
Well, we've got on really well before, so I was like, I can invite her around to my house. She's passed the test.
She'll be fine. And I'll just come in, I'm drinking all your wine. But
it's pretty good wine, isn't it?
It's really nice red wine. I need to try the lavalier thing. So lavalier is it clips onto your
clips on,
clothes.
Yeah. I mean, I have issues sometimes with lab mics, because I feel like sometimes you can't achieve the best sound possible, but I think sometimes I overthink these things. I think as a producer, I just need to relax a little bit. So I'm thinking with Get Off Your Breast, season 3, always trying to make it sound better and bigger and better. So just trying to figure out the best setup to make people the most comfortable.
So you guys are in a studio for that one?
No. So I think we are going to still try and kind of go to people's houses. Just because it just depends really. Sometimes, because Liana works at Radio X, so, you know, if everyone's essential, then we can use her studio. So it just depends really.
Here, Shola and I compare our experiences of meeting Charlie Brooker through our work. Shola definitely wins because she got photos taken with him. I've interviewed Charlie Brooker a couple of times and I made a podcast about Black Mirror. He was also on the Laverne show recently, which Shola was producing.
Well, I feel like you were better friends with him because you had a photo shoot with him, and I haven't.
I wouldn't say the word photo shoot. It was like a photo. I kind of jumped.
There was more than one photo.
Yeah, there were. We had like a very very mini photo shoot.
We're talking about Charlie Brooker. I like how we just drew this out. So Charlie Brooker, who I've interviewed a couple of times, but I've never had a photo shoot with. So I think you're winning. What was he in for and what was he like?
So he was on Laverne's show. We are incredible producer Ash, who I love to bits. He's great. He devised this hour slot thing where we get kind of guests in for a whole hour where they talk about what they're plugging but also play their favourite tunes. And Charlie Brooker was in for an hour and he was incredible. I was super nervous to meet him. Obviously being a big Black Mirror fan, he was great, and he's very humble, and he's one, we had like kind of just shooting the breeze and just had, random chats, but for someone of his intelligence, he has a real knack for making you never feel like you're stupid, and that's a rare thing. He was great, he was lovely, and I asked for a picture, and I don't often, there's only, since I've started the job actually, it's only been him and Paul Weller. So I'm quite good at not asking for pictures, but
he's in good company.
Yeah.
He's in good company. So Weller's been in.
So what's that?
Weller's been in. You've had a photo.
Yeah.
Brooker's had an entire photo shoot.
Yeah.
What about Springsteen?
We've never had Springsteen. We're just looking at, for context, I've got a big kind of Springsteen picture on my wall. I've never met Springsteen. That would be the dream. I don't know what I'd do if I met him.
If you're listening, Bruce.
I've met Steve Van Zandt from his band, but not.
So you've got 1 degree.
Yeah, it's a 1 degree separation. You look at someone like Charlie Brooker who's like, oh my God, he's achieved so much and he's done this. But I think the actual reality of it is that, he's had an idea and then it's like him probably in a dark room, not being able to see his family and kids for a while and having to do loads of rewrites and dealing with loads of people. But, but after, but when it's all done, you just see the awards and you just see, kind of the finished product. But I think it can be quite stressful. But he, he mentioned that when talking on air, and it was really interesting because I think it can help writers to realise that it's not all just about the end product. It's about kind of how you cope with the process of either writing or kind of getting ideas together and stuff.
How do you think the conversation around radio has changed with digital?
Yeah.
So you used to only have phone-ins, maybe the occasional letter, but it would come in so long after the show. Now you have to constantly be looking at social. Is that something you do?
Yeah, so basically on our show, we obviously print out messages and kind of, it's very interactive text. It's great because you get that immediate hit of interaction. So that's quite interesting. And, emails and just kind of keeping, but it's kind of like that validation to know that you're doing a good job. We play, we have this segment called People's Playlist on Lauren Laverne show, which, I loved, we have to get clips for, which is great. And to get people kind of immediately responding to that's great. And just also the music that we're playing. And, that's why I love radio. It's that, radio is that person who is in the house with you when you're on your own, and it makes you feel like you're not alone. Like I had this weird thing when I was growing up, and one of the reasons why I loved radio was because having a radio on was always different to putting a CD on. Like I felt more safer when the radio was on rather than putting a CD on. It's almost like when a presenter was talking, it was like they were talking to me, and it was interesting. And I just kind of try and think why. I've always tried to kind of decipher why I love radio, because you can kind of get lost in the world of it, the politics and the bureaucracy and everything. But ultimately it is because I'm a crazy music head. Like, I'm just obsessed with music. Like I'm just so obsessed with music. That's like, you know, which is interesting because I do podcasts, but since I was like as early as I can remember, I just was obsessed with music. Radio was instrumental in me finding out about a lot of music. You see my like record collection over there. I was playing Barry Manilow yesterday.
It is vinyl.
I was really enjoying it. I get the most joy out of listening. Like, I got a bunch of 7-inches yesterday, and before making dinner, I literally would just play them and have like a glass of wine, and that's just like my therapy, my de-stress for the day.
So we have Spotify for the music, and we have podcasts for the chatting, and you're kind of in one mood or another. What do you think? You do love radio.
It depends what show it is. Like someone like Sean Keaveney, who I've worked on the show quite a lot over the last year, and he is an incredible broadcaster. He's someone who, I mean, him and his team, not to be biased or anything, but I remember the first time I worked in the show, I was so nervous because I was like, Sean Keaveney, I'm like in love with that man. Like, I have to like play it down when I see him around because he's just so cool, and he doesn't think he's cool, but he's so cool, and he carries that show. And you know, he does like obviously a lot of talking, and it's weird, like music is kind of the backdrop, and it's the kind of like the break from his great talking. So I think that's an example of like kind of talking and music just working together. And also he's just jokes and just I mean, we literally sit there, me, my producer Ash, we literally just sit there just laughing. And when we get in the morning, because we get in at 8, so we've got like the last 2 hours of his show. But for me personally, I like to kind of split them up. I like to listen to podcasts. I like to have like, right, okay, for example, it's a Wednesday, today's high-low day, and the high-low podcast, which I love, or a Desert Island Discs or something, and I kind of need to be in the right mood. I do find it hard to mix the two in a weird way, but I guess for example, what BBC Sounds are doing is quite interesting because they're trying to like take the element of radio, you know, so BBC acknowledging that the way people listen to radio and podcasts audio is just different to how it used to be, and they're trying to kind of accommodate that. I think
they've packaged up radio, and I'm not sure people listen like that anymore. I think when people get to choose, they're in the mood for music or the mood for company.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we've got podcasts and music. I'm really interested to see if over time BBC Sounds will start taking the radio shows off and repackaging them as talking and music. I mean,
for example, what they do on Desert Island Disco, People's Playlist on Laverne show, they kind of have it as standalone segments which kind of run later on in the week or the next week. So I guess certain people might just listen to Lauren's show for Desert Island Disco. So it's like them listening to like half an hour of music and no chat, or People's Playlist, which is like clips of music. So yeah, maybe people are just like kind of wanting to listen to that as a standalone thing. It's all trial and error. I think we need to be able to play around with things and see what works and what sticks, because you know, it's crazy with podcasts. It's blown up so much that now the big companies are literally trailing behind, being like, oh my God, like, how do we catch up with this?
What makes a good podcast? Because I was reading something today about podcasts having a low barrier to entry. But actually, there's something I'm learning. You know, audio quality doesn't just happen like that.
No.
So you can give it completely over to a producer. I'm trying to learn that side, but actually I'd say the barrier to entry keeps inching up, because the more you learn about audio, the more you then hear the flaws in your old audio, and then you try and improve it, and people give you advice.
Audio quality?
Quality, not the content.
Yeah. I mean, audio quality can sometimes be something that really kind of eats me up a bit. And it's something that I beat myself a lot over, and sometimes I just have to just chill out and realise that, you know, not all audio quality has to be like in the studio. As long as people can hear you clearly and it's not too quiet or it's not too loud, it's not distorting, then it's fine. I think what makes a good podcast is just kind of having an original, simple idea. But I think some podcasts tend to overcomplicate themselves, and it's all about stripping it back. When you think of really good formats, like Desert Island Discs, choose 8 songs and talk about them, and then integrate that with how you grew up. It's a very basic idea, but it works every time, and you learn so much from people. And it's just about asking the right questions.
I think as well with Desert Island Discs, songs evoke the sense of a time period really strongly. So that's why you have a film soundtrack, particularly when that film is set in the past. And also, when you're a teenager, you're so receptive to pop culture. When you become any older than a teenager, there's no music as good as when you're a teenager. There's nothing's as good. Whatever your kids listen to, it's never as good. It is for them.
Yeah.
Because you're open to the world at that point in time. Then I think you gently close up and you've become the person you are. So, yeah, music is amazing for, evoking that nostalgia and taking
it's
you back.
crazy. Like, when you think of, God, when I was growing up, there's a lot of music that I listened to back then, which I just couldn't even listen to now, but it takes me back to a certain place. Like, even this Desiree or Lighthouse Family. Those were like the early... I was so into that music, and it evokes, like, I'm just getting kind of goosebumps even talking about it. It's weird because I don't listen to them now, but...
I listened to that era, I was listening to the radio.
Magic FM was the...
I still love Magic.
So basically, Magic was the radio station that started it for me. Magic and Kiss FM, which is kind of very two different
I was
stations,
listening to Kiss,
obviously. I was listening...
Capital.
So from an interaction perspective, Kiss FM was a massive influence on me. Bam and Streetboy, Breakfast Show.
Oh my God, you just make me right back.
This is going real. Like, me being at school.
Yep.
My radio was kind of weirdly tilted because that's the only way I could get the reception, and like no one could touch it. So no one touched it. But Bam and Streetboy, like, literally, I was so obsessed with Bam Bam that I would go to Holloway Road and wait outside Kiss FM, even though I had no idea what he looked like. It was pre-Google. Must have been about 14 or something.
It must have been the quality of his broadcasting that did this.
His voice made it. And I found a picture of him later on, and then I was like, yeah, it wasn't really my type at the time. From that perspective, it was like that was the power of an incredible presenter. And then, but from a musical, it was Magic FM. I learnt so much music from Magic. And, like, when you think about music evoking reactions and emotions, every time I hear Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing, I'm always taken back to a really, really hot day when I was quite young, and my dad being on the balcony with like a white vest on and shorts, and him playing like Marvin Gaye on vinyl and Sexual Healing. And it just reminds me of blazing, even though lyrically it's questionable, but that song always reminds me of...
the thing is, like, for a parents' generation, you didn't skip a song. Yeah. You couldn't skip a song.
Yeah, exactly.
It was vinyl.
Yeah, it was vinyl. And it's like, I've still got some of my dad's records, which I nicked when I moved out. Tell my dad.
Oh God, my mum had Barbara Streisand, and a name that I think cannot be spoken by someone born after 1990 because they will never have heard of her. Nana Mouskouri.
Oh, I don't know Nana Mouskouri.
Oh my God, why would you? She was just massive in the 70s. This Greek lady with giant glasses.
Yeah,
songs about love and loss.
I mean, I love.
She was big in the 70s, but then nothing now.
Yeah,
she doesn't have a digital afterlife. Oh, wow. Maybe I should start the Nana Mouskouri podcast. Was she real? Missing Nana Mouskouri.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I'm massively into like the music of the 70s and like, Bee Gees, and I was talking about Andy Gibb yesterday, the forgotten Gibb brother, and he's got some amazing disco tracks. I love Supremes, Diana Ross, and
Motown. Yeah,
Motown. And I'm just kind of scooching over my collection over there. And Neil Young, and just Leonard Cohen, who I got in more because of my boyfriend, because we all have this thing about kind of slightly bittersweet love songs. Like, at the moment, my obsession is Richard Russell, who founded XL Records, and he has this album called Everything Is Recorded, and I do these mixtapes, which is basically a mixture of music, but with samples and documentary clips, interviews. It's all chopped up together, and it has a theme. And he had this album called Everything Is Recorded, which came out early this year, and I was quite late to the train. I've been listening to it in the last couple of months. I'm just completely obsessed with it. And I do see when I get really obsessed and really inspired, and I'm like, I need an outlet. I need an outlet, and I get frustrated. But it's weird because I've never
a creative outlet.
But I've never considered myself as like one of those creatives. I'm using inverted commas here.
Is this a producer thing? Is this being?
Yeah.
Oh wait, not in front. But did you host your own podcast to begin with?
Yeah, I don't like talking. I love talking, but I don't like talking.
I'm so sorry.
That's it. I don't like talking in terms of presenting, but I like telling a story through other means.
Okay, good.
So, for example, the mixtape that I do is it combines my love for documentaries, which kind of speak for me a little bit, and music. So I like to kind of, I guess maybe that's why I like to be a producer. I like to be in the background, kind of, rather than in the front as a presenter talking, because I always feel like I can never get my point across eloquently enough. So I try and get that through vicariously through like editing.
Well, editing is so powerful in audio.
So I like editing and making stories through editing and moving things around.
I like presenting and the editing. I'm just a megalomaniac.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You're great as a presenter. I'm better in the background, literally getting a bit of audio and then going to a massive editing hole. That's kind of where I feel I flourish. And it's just trying to find a happy medium, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because there can be a point where a person doesn't ever get the podcast out.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I've got to do this and this and this first. And it's better to get it out.
Oh, yeah, massively. I think, I know a lot of people procrastinate. And I did too. I procrastinated for a while. And then I was like, I just have to do it. And I was like, I can't look back on life and know that, I didn't do this idea because I took myself out of it.
There's hard work and it's a bit of risk taking.
It's hard, it's hard work. And, I've said this a lot. The last 2 years have been stress.
Look, you're working too much.
I almost burnt out, actually. Looking back on it, I
think it's easier in a digital age because you can keep saying yes to all these kinds of side hustles and things.
I was saying yes, but also because I took a bit of a break from radio. About 5 years ago, I took a bit of a break because I was like, I'm applying for all these jobs at the BBC and I'm not getting it. What's going on? But if I was really honest with myself, I was waiting for that perfect job to come up.
I have a theory that listeners these days are either in a music mood or in a I want to hear voices or conversation going on around me kind of mood. So we have Spotify for music, and then for the other stuff we have podcasts, and we also have talk radio, which is becoming really big. Shola mentions how she spoke on a panel recently and told the audience that she listens to Nigel Farage and Katie Hopkins on LBC, and they were shocked. But she makes a really good point to me that listening to them pushes her outside of her comfort zone. She doesn't agree with them, and that's not going to change. But listening to them is the opposite of getting her news and views from within the echo chamber of social media.
I think it's really interesting how we're separating spoken word, like LBC, all of these spoken word radios.
I love LBC, and it was funny because I was on a panel a few weeks ago, and I remember saying that I listened to Nigel Farage's show and Katie Hopkins when she was on there, and people was like, "What?" There was literally gasps. And to go on record, I'm
politically aligned to both of them.
Absolutely against both of them.
Yeah.
In a very intense way. I do not support them in any way. I don't do politics publicly ever. Not that I have a public platform, but I don't talk politics on social media really because it just ends up, I try and talk about it in other ways. But I remember saying that I listened to LBC and their shows because I think in order for you to get a real idea of why things are happening the way they are, you need to kind of step into the shoes of other people and figure out why they are angry and why they are voting the way they're voting. And yeah, you need to get in their world a little bit because I think, not talk politics, but when you think about Brexit, it was a massive shock because I remember thinking, no, it's not gonna, people are going to leave, it's not going to happen. But it is.
I went on holiday. I was
it's going to be fine. Like by the next day, we're just going to be like a business as usual. And Cameron will be like, shouldn't have done this in the bloody first place. And so, but basically, it's very important. I think LBC. I listen to it quite often to get the views on what other people are thinking. And it's crazy. Talk radio is so popular. I love James O'Brien. I love him to bits. I mean.
He works very well on social as well.
Yeah,
because
he's great. Yeah,
he always explains things. Sometimes.
Yeah, because because I think that there is a lot of things that people are very unclear of, and he really breaks it down. His podcast is really great, and he one of my favorite episodes was him and Akala, he's a rapper activist, really fantastic guy. But James O'Brien really kind of took a step back and realised that actually, you know, there's a lot that I don't know about certain things that he's talking about, and he was willing to kind of, you know, he didn't try and bulldoze the conversation. He took a step back, which was really interesting.
I think it's the beauty of getting to do stuff like this, is asking people stuff and be like, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's, you know, I've always been like, if I don't know something, I'm like, teach me.
Yeah.
But I think that comes with age, though. You know, now, like, I've made the mistake of, for example, taking on jobs where I felt that because they, you know, they didn't want to spend the money, that the, you know, budget constraints and stuff like that, it meant that they wouldn't get the best possible recording. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you know what? I don't want to put my name to it, so I won't do it. If I do it, it's like, it's at your risk. We're literally the only generation where we've had both, haven't we?
Yeah, like
in terms of like,
yeah, completely.
We grew up without computers and then had computers, so we had a life where we didn't have a computer, and then we did.
Are we digital natives?
I feel like I'm a digital native because we got our first computer. I was probably about 10, so about 10 years old.
We got some in the mid-80s.
We got our first computer, but it was obviously Windows 95. You could play solitaire and very basic things on there. I'd say we're natives.
Yeah. My dad got me a Nokia 3210, so he didn't know where it was.
I remember having a 6210 and thinking I was absolute badass because I was like, I've got a business phone, which is a 6210.
Is it a business phone?
It was. Yeah, my dad was a bit of a Nigerian del boy. Where
he got you the best phone he could.
You kind of didn't really ask questions, but you got a phone and a charger, and there might be some numbers or other people's numbers on there, but you just didn't ask questions. I got a 6210, and it was like kind of a big, slightly bigger. So you delete all the numbers and text messages, and then you could always, as long as you could play Snake, you were fine.
Yes.
So you could play Snake, which was great, that was. I remember I did have a 3210. I remember it being revolutionary when you could do your own ringtones and your own
your own cover.
Yeah, but it's crazy how it is now, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've lived through that much change.
I love the fact that we're the only generation where we had a life without phones and life with phones. We're our age is the only generation.
That's why,
which is super special. I use Instagram as a mood board. I don't tend to post on my Instagram. There's not that many pictures of myself. I don't need to put pictures of me. I put pictures of what I'm into, videos of what I'm into. I put pictures of records, and if I'm obsessed with Otis Redding one week, I'll post a picture of him being like, I've been reading loads about Otis Redding or Eartha Kitt or Isaac Hayes or something like that, and I just use it as a mood board, and then you kind of get like-minded people who.
So music is now no longer like a one-to-one connection that you have with it. Yeah, it's now we can share it. That's the difference between the analog and digital age. Those things you kind of keep in your head. Yeah, you couldn't. Where could you share it? You could only share it by telling someone.
Well, exactly.
And this is different to telling someone.
More. I've learned so much from people on Instagram. Like I follow some really super super interesting people. Like this guy Douglas Hart, who's with Jesus and Mary Chain. He always posts these like really incredible archive pictures from really random films I would never have heard of in my life, and he they all become these like kind of mini curators who are just spouting what's in their brain. It's incredible. Like people like Jarvis Cocker, like Steve Mackey from Pulp, and just super interesting people, and Pam Hogg who I love, and she's she posts up really interesting pictures, and you kind of get an insight into what people are thinking. It's great. Actually, you learn loads from it, and I have like loads of folders and stuff like that from from fashion to art to music to film, and it's just acts as one big Pinterest basically.
So I think knowledge is a different kind of concept in an internet age.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you can go and find so much stuff. You can find other people's memories on their social.
Yeah,
it's a Black Mirror kind of conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Actually. When you really think about it, it's this weird alternate universe where you feel connected to certain people who you've never met, and there's. But
actually, that's like radio.
When we play songs on Lauren's show, and people will message in being like, this song was played at my dad's funeral. It's brought back so many memories, happy memories or sad memories, or this song is our first wedding dance. And, that, again, the power of music, because, like, music is actually one of the greatest things to ever exist in humanity. There's nothing as good as music, really.
So, if we did your Desert Island Discs,
yeah,
what would you have?
God. There's certain tracks which like have made like massive impacts on my life. Like Roxy music. Firstly, there's a track called Mother of Pearl. It's like the first track which was really just completely shook me to the core, and I was like, wow, this kind of completely blew my mind when I heard it. And it's basically 2 songs in one. Pink Floyd's a massive influence. Like, I love the Wall album, so I'm just gonna put the whole of the Wall album as one track.
All the bricks of the Wall, yeah.
And also, I went. I saw them at Live 8, and it's still one of the greatest gigs of my life. Just incredible. Captain Beefheart, Ice Cream for Crow is the first song that I saw late night on TV. Mars Volta were doing an MTV2 like tracks that they were inspired by, and they started talking about this guy Captain Beefheart, and he just came up, and I was like, oh my god, who's this guy? Like, he's just this guy with a hat, this old guy with a hat, like, go, it's alright, you don't like that. And I was like, oh my god, my mind was just completely blown. And I was just like,
we don't have music television anymore. We don't need it.
You know, I would literally, it's so funny because my dad, he was obviously, his bedroom was like above the living room, so the TV would always be quite low, and I would literally always be sat on the edge of the seat to get close to the TV. And when I think of memories of listening to music, watching music late at night, and like John Peel and stuff like that, and just kind of Top of the Pops, and I'd always be at the edge of the seat. But yeah, so Captain Beefheart came on like quite late on late night TV, and it just completely blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. Primal Scream is another one. Scream Delicate album like meant a whole lot to me growing up. The track Come Together, that, you know, samples Jesse Jackson doing like an incredible speech from the 60s. I'm into so many different types of music. So Isaac Hayes was a massive, like, I got into him so hard like a few years ago, and that shook me. Orchestral Motown sound. Elvis Costello was probably the first artist to make me really think about lyrics. Got it in vinyl over there. It's got Oliver's Army. Elvis Costello was someone who really made me think about lyrics, and I could really, because when I listened to a lot of music, I never really kind of picked up lyrics. And then I got really into like kind of Motown for a while, and like Sam Cooke and Otis Redding, all of that. Marvin Gaye, massively. Trouble Man album. Bobby Womack as well was a really big influence on me growing up. Like Jackie Brown. I think when I'm watching Jackie Brown, it's track Across 110th Street.
That's about 96, isn't it?
Yeah. So Across 110th Street, I think they came out in the late 70s.
So there's a nostalgia in the 90s for the 70s as well.
Yeah. So I love a lot of new music, but really my heart has always lied with old music. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is the analogue sound, the way things were recorded. Like, if I really like a song, I almost immediately buy it on 7-inch to kind of listen to it through there. So I did another one. I bought a Robert Wyatt Shipbuilding track on 7-inch this morning because I was listening to a radio show with Damon Albarn and Richard Russell, and they were talking about a song, and I was like, God, I haven't listened to that song in ages, and I really need the Elvis Costello version. So then I just went out and bought the 7-inch Robert Wyatt.
Did you go to Spotify?
What's that? Yeah, I know. It was on YouTube, and I was like, oh God, just get on 7-inch. The list goes on, basically. I could be here all day talking about all of my favourite artists.
I think the thing you mentioned about samples, and actually I was thinking of covers, it's so interesting the way you redo a song. So remember when Killing Me Softly came out, the Fugees? I really like that song. It's a great song. It's still a good song. Mm-hmm. And my mum started telling me about the original Roberta Flack song.
Roberta Flack, yeah.
And it was only in that conversation, like the two songs are having a conversation with each other, but I'm not aware of that first song. I didn't know it. It wasn't as easy to find it in the 90s. And so she was telling me what that song was like and what it meant and what a big deal it was when it came out and how it sounded different to other things. It's a very bare bones song. I'm
obsessed with cover versions. So I think that's probably my
90s was big for cover versions.
Because I as these mixtapes I do, which are usually themed. So I think the next one's probably going to be about samples and how R&B in the 90s.
Sampled everything,
and but also even in the 70s and the 60s, everything's a sample.
It's like literature does it, like a reference back to something.
But also how like a sample can take elements of an original and just turn it into something completely new. So I was listening to Barry Manilow last night, who did Could It Be Magic, which Take That did in the 90s, and quite a few people don't actually know that was originally Barry Manilow, But his song was about, you know, this girl called Melissa, and it's kind of a love song. But then you got like Take That, who just completely stripped it down and made it into like kind of quite dancey, Could it be magic? You know, like just made it into like a fun song. Yeah. But you listen to, which I've got on vinyl for Barry Manilow, it's literally this kind of really long piano-led, slightly Elton John-esque version. But Take That, I've kind of, well, I guess it's producers and stuff, they've kind of just completely reappropriated and made something completely new.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always found really interesting with samples. And when I think about songs that I love and how they've been sampled, it's almost like creating a new song with just those same elements, you know.
I don't think we sample as much in a digital age because it's too easy to find the original.
No, I don't know. I think, you know, people still sample stuff loads. Like, you know,
of like the last 10 years, I suppose. Bless her, she's not around anymore. But Amy Winehouse, Tears Dry on Their Own is my favourite one of hers. And that samples Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Yeah.
There's two very different songs, but it makes the opening of the song more joyous. You think it's going to be an upbeat Amy. It's her I Will Survive.
Yeah.
But it's not a happy song. It's the song of someone quite fragile singing I Will Survive. And Ain't No Mountain High Enough is different. It's about absence making the heart grow fonder, I suppose, is the best way of putting it.
But that's the thing with samples, it's like one of my all-time favourites, Gladys Knight doing The Look of Love, and you know, obviously Dusty is incredible, untouchable, but Gladys just does this incredible version of it, and it just blows it out of the water and just creates like this whole new song. And like just today I was listening, we were at work and we were playing Wu-Tang Clan, I Can't Go to Sleep, and that samples Isaac Hayes' Walk On By, which is a cover of Dionne Warwick, you know, so you just fall into the whole sample upon covers upon samples.
It's like analog Wikipedia.
But it just creates like, but that I Can't Go to Sleep, it's just so angry, and using that backdrop of the Isaac Hayes version, it just works. It just works.
While we do keep returning to the subject of music, analogue and digital, here's what Shola has to say about her career so far.
I love being in the background, making things kind of happen and working in certain ways, and like...
It's like the director of a film.
Yeah. So, like, you know, when I think about Lauren Laverne's show and how Ash, the producer, he kind of came up with that concept of the you know, the hour for the artist or the guest who's coming in, where, you know, it's actually a really simple but very effective idea, because, you know, you have somebody who comes in and then they choose songs. And, you know, the person listening could get, like, a completely new view of them at the end of it. Because, like, when Paul Weller was in, he was choosing tracks like Georgia Smith and Childish Gambino, and people think, wow, Paul Weller's into that. Like, you'd never think that. But I love that that's actually, you know, turning on its head. And he was saying how he's influenced by the music that his daughter's listening to. He's telling him about music. So you just assume that he just listens to, like, the Beatles and the Faces or something. But you do, like, you know...
It had to be made before, like, 1980.
Yeah, but then actually it's like, you know...
No, a good artist wouldn't do that. A good artist wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
They'd be listening to everything.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, you know, kind of breaking down barriers. Because, you know, also as a, you know, as a black woman who went, you know, growing up in... loving the music that I loved, I was always seen as a bit different, because stereotypically
there are tribes around certain kinds of music.
Very, you know, but luckily, weirdly, music this day isn't as tribal as it used to be. But back then, it was like, you know, you were a black girl, you listened to Ja Rule, and which I loved. I loved Ja Rule and Ashanti and Mystical and all of that. But then I was also into Elton John, and I was also into Mike and the Mechanics. So
yes, you know, looking back over my shoulder.
So you know, I was into Tears for Fears. So it was like.
And so the 90s, you had Oasis and Blur. I don't think you'd have that. I don't think you have just the spotlight on one or two bands in the musical culture anymore. We're all in our fragmented places listening to different things.
Yeah, I think everyone's listening to really different things nowadays. It's definitely not as tribal as it used to be.
No.
Before, it was like, you were into a certain kind of music, you couldn't be into anything else. Whereas now, it's actually encouraged for you to be into loads of different things. So, like, it's like when people ask me, like, what kind of music you're into, and I'm like...
Everything?
I don't know, I just ask me what the last thing I listened to. Because literally one day, like, you know, yes, I was listening to Jamie XX on the way in, and then the day before that, I was listening to, like, Akka Bilk. So it's like, it just depends what mood I'm into. I listen to loads of podcasts, but I've definitely scaled back recently, and I do actually think that I went a bit overboard, and and now I'm actually getting back into listening. Well, actually, I'm listening to audiobooks now. At the moment, I'm listening to Beastie Boys' book, which I'm really getting into because it's weird. Because with Beastie Boys, I love them dearly, immensely, but it's like I never really. Like musically, I was never like a massive die-hard fan. I was always a big fan of Beastie Boys' ethics and what they were into. And
isn't that interesting? You can
I kind of I'm really quite good at separating. Like I can be really, but I've listened to like some of the albums and I love like a few of their albums. Don't get me wrong.
Do you think that do you take in information better through your ears? Do you think you're that kind of person?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a very visual person, weirdly. I don't think
it's weird because I think on the one hand it might come naturally. You'll know this more because you work with more presenting talent than I have. I think sometimes you have people who have a talent for painting pictures with words, and that's why they work well in audio. And on the other hand, with social, I mean, Instagram stories and podcasts go together really well for me because I'm going to put a picture of this setup you have here on Instagram stories because it's behind the scenes.
Yeah.
There's something about stories because they go that extra click.
Yeah.
And I can see everyone who looks at my Instagram stories and they want to know what I'm doing.
I do prefer Instagram stories to, like, for example, writing. I feel like a picture can, put you 1,000 words to say that quote, but I feel like I'm definitely more of a visual person and hearing, and I guess hearing as well.
But have you worked in written media, whether it's digital or printed?
So I used to be a journalist, but I really struggled with writing, and I never felt I was good enough. It never came as natural to me.
Where did you work? What kind of publications?
It was a youth publication called Live magazine, which was incredible. Like I owe a massive part of my career to Live magazine. Unfortunately, those kind of initiatives don't really exist anymore. But when I was like 19, I started working for the council because I didn't want to go to university. So I basically worked in housing. My older sister used to always make me buy Time Out magazine every week. And I remember seeing in Time Out about Live magazine, thinking, "Oh, this looks interesting."
Did it have an exclamation mark?
Yeah, so So it was basically it was a South London magazine based in Brixton, and I remember doing reviews I started doing reviews for them because I started doing music reviews. I remember Elbow at Shepherd's Bush Empire was one of the first ones I did, and I started writing, but I never felt 100% comfortable with writing, but the people there were incredible and they really encouraged me. And then I went for the editor job, which I got. So I was editor at like 19 for like a couple of years, which is incredible. And I worked there and worked for the council, Lambeth Council, for 2 days of the week. And yeah, but I never got that knack for writing.
I think writing about music is really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's something...
I've always found it really difficult explaining why I love music.
Yes.
So even all of my favourite bands, I couldn't really tell you why I love them, but...
I know.
I remember that on numerous occasions I've tried to explain why I love Pink Floyd's The Wall album so much.
Because it's about how
I just can't do it.
And there's something about, say Pink Floyd, when you first heard it compared to how you hear it now, and you still feel the nostalgia of when you first heard it, and then when you first heard it wasn't when it first came out. And so there's but it sounds of its time, 60s and 70s. It's quite a layered, complex thing.
Try to explain like why I love the Beatles, for example, because I remember when I was younger I was a bit of a silly idiot who basically read too much of the media where basically bands had to be again tribal, where it's like you can either only love the Beatles or the Stones, where in reality but you can love both bands equally. But I remember trying to explain why I love the Beatles, and I can't really explain it. Like, why do I love A Day in the Life so much? Like, why do I love Abbey Road album? Like, why am I so obsessed with them? Like, why do I think that they, why do I get so overwhelmed that I want to cry? Yeah, so I worked for the council for a couple of years, and then I started working at Live magazine, and then I got... So basically, with Live magazine, you have to like leave when you're 21 because you're too old. I'm using inverted commas. They try to keep it youthful, but not in that kind of anti-ageist way.
It's the Logan's Run of magazine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and then I started working for Sony Music I worked in PR, and then a woman who started a PR company, I worked with her. So I worked in PR, but it just was not for me. But in the background, I was kind of doing radio, community radio quite a bit. I was working at Roundhouse Radio. I was doing like Extreme East Radio. I was doing loads of like little radio bits. And then, meanwhile, I kind of got a job at a recording studio and in mastering. So I worked there for 8 years. And in that time, I was, doing my show at Roundhouse Radio, which was great. And that was a way for me to have my kind of creative outlet.
So when you did your show, were you presenting and did you enjoy that?
I was presenting and I kind of enjoyed it, but I realised that I preferred to script it but not actually talk. I also did some Bestival Radio stuff in between that, which was unbelievable. Actually, Bestival Radio was some of the best days of my
What is it, life. Bestival?
Yeah, so Bestival had their kind of, makeshift radio stations set up every year. And we had a great team, some of which I'm still in touch with some of the people there.
So you'd go to Isle of Wight and
went to Isle of Wight and like I love working at Bestival. And then I was working at Live Magazine, and then as mentioned, I started doing podcasts, which led to basically my job at the BBC really. But
you were quite proactive with the podcast. You went and looked up bloggers. Yeah, you found Emma Gannon. I looked
up bloggers and just hustled loads and just started producing, really going to people's houses. I mean, a piece of advice I'd give anyone is literally just do it. You literally just have to go out and do it. Like, don't talk yourself out of it. Don't think about it too long. The internet has everything you need. Like, you just have to look for it, and you have to take the time, because I took the time to find the equipment, and I went through a stage where I was going to loads of panel talks, and it got a bit much because I was like hearing the same thing, and you just kind of do have to be like, right, I'm just going to do it.
I'm really glad I didn't overthink Black Mirror Cracked.
Yeah.
And what I learned from that experience was how people respond to my presenting my voice, because you don't know that until you do it.
Yeah.
And then this podcast I have had to think about. I've had in mind since I left my last job that I would do a second one. But what it would be over time has gone from being about slow cookers, and it's gone through many permutations, but then this ends up feeling right. There is something about having lived in both the analogue and digital age.
If you want to start a podcast, just read up on what you need to do to get started. You just need some good equipment, a good idea, and a rough script of what you need, like a running order or a script of questions. Don't overthink it, and don't be afraid to take a break, because I took a break from radio for a while. Because sometimes when you're on that train of trying to succeed, sometimes you can lose sight of what you actually really want. And I took a few years out, because I was feeling a bit, oh shit, like what do I want to do? And it wasn't until taking that break I kind of actually I realised that I really wanted it. And sometimes taking a break means you get the clarification that you really, really, really want this. And so that's like a really big tip. So don't be afraid to take a break. I said I took a few years out, and it did me the world of good. It probably is the reason why... I wouldn't say I've made it, but I've gotten a foot in the door. And Six Music is like my all-time favourite station. It's a station I've listened to for, years. When they threatened to close, I still have my letter that I wrote to them saying the reason why they can't close. And, walking in that building every day is an incredible feeling. And I'm not afraid to say that I got it because I worked really hard. And you do have to work really hard, because it's not easy out there. It's so competitive, and it's so competitive, and people are fighting every day to keep their jobs. So you kind of really have to stand out. And even though I'm in there, like I'm working on like a show, and next year I'm moving to Breakfast, which is a massive change, and it's going to be basically the biggest one of the biggest shows on Six Music. It's tough, but you just have to just get on with it and realise, actually, I can do this. And also another tip is that never think that anyone else is better than you. You have to humanise people and realise that everyone is the same, and you can be just as good. It's weird because I'm so used to being on the other side, where I'm just doing like silent laughs and nods.
Yes.
And I noticed that you were doing that.
Yes.
Which is good, by the way. It's good producer.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of doing both. Do you think it works?
Yeah. Like,
do you think it's possible?
Silent laughs are great for editing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I found myself doing both, which obviously you couldn't do.
Yeah, the worst thing is when people are like, when producers like laugh and then it's just an absolute bugger to edit. So silent laughs are great.
Thanks to Shola Aleje for letting us record at her flat and for producing this episode. If you'd like to get involved in the conversation, I'd love to hear from you. So you can find Freelance Pod on Twitter and Instagram, you can join the Facebook group, and you can also sign up to the newsletter. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.